Traditional Sweet Recipes from Malta Volume 2, soon available at www.traditionalmaltesweets.com. Traditional Sweet Recipes, creating a small slice of Malta that feels like home.
Il-mistieden li jmissu għal-awtur James Cristina li wara li novella minn tiegħu rebħet il-premju tal-Lord Mayor għal kitba kreattiva, iddeċieda li jdawwar dik in-novella fl-ewwel pubblikazzjoni tiegħu bl-isem Antidote to a Curse.
James, you initially won the Lord Mayor's Literary Prize.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because that certainly has the origins of this novel in it.
It does indeed.
Yeah.
I won an award for a novella that I wrote, around 17,000 words, if I remember correctly. And I used that and draft material to develop a novel of around 60,000 words.
So this being your first novel and obviously going through that process of developing it into a novel, what were the elements that you took from that novella to bring into the novel?
I actually used the entire novella. I found it very helpful. At the time that I entered the prize, it was part of a draft novel. So what I ended up doing was using that novella and using that as the beginning to my new novel.
Yeah. How would you describe the novel? What is the gist of the story for our readers, for our viewers?
I won't give too much away because I'd like people ideally to read it and to maybe make sense of it themselves. But it's a novel about creativity, and it's a novel about discovering a story.
Yeah. So your story, I guess, is a little bit interesting. You were born in Malta.
Yes.
You grew up in Australia.
Yes.
You've worked in a number of different places around the world. How have you brought your experiences into the writing of this story?
Well, the travel and the experiences are really important because you just gain so much, and they do filter into the writing.
Yeah. With the process of getting the novella into a novel, how closely did you work with publishers to sort of bring this together?
I was very fortunate. I found working with the publisher at Transit Lounge to be a very productive experience, and we did work quite closely.
So for you as a first-time writer, what kind of elements did working closely with a publisher, what did that mean to you? Like, what did it bring to the story?
I suppose a sounding board, because sometimes, writing is a very isolated type of activity, and to be able to test out ideas and to have someone to test those ideas on helped a lot. It gave me some direction.
So then, with the structure of the novel, how would you, describe the structure of, in your writing style and the way that you've put the novel together? I know you're trying not to tell us about the story, but
no,
it's Melbourne-based.
Okay. Yeah, it's Melbourne-based.
Yeah. And it's, it's a story that's early 80s?
Early 90s.
The early 90s. So is it very much the time and place that you've sort of set it in there?
Yes, it's mid-90s after the Balkans War.
Yeah.
And it's set in Melbourne, but it's also set in other places. It's set in Europe as well.
Yeah.
It's a twofold structure. So we have one strand set in Melbourne, and we have another strand set in Europe.
Yeah. So when you're writing your story and you're mapping it out.
Yes.
And you're working on these two strands. How difficult was it to actually map that out? I know. Do you do it separately and then bring it together, or in what ways did you structure it to sort of get it so it's readable? I guess.
It was enormously difficult. I think I did it concurrently. I did it together.
Yeah. So the characters in the story, I guess, you've got two stories kind of happening concurrently, I guess, for the reader.
Yes.
And I guess the overlap is the meeting in Melbourne.
Yes.
So do you at some point decide to give more attention to one strand of the story, or how did you go about doing that?
I think the Melbourne strand is stronger, if you like, in that it's more dominant. But yeah, the two strands are related though, nonetheless. They're not separate.
Yeah, cool. So you've achieved this great achievement of having your first novel published.
Thank you.
And you're obviously now in the process of promoting the novel.
Yes.
So
Here it is.
This is it here.
Antidote to a Curse.
Tell me a little bit about the cover.
Yeah, the cover is interesting actually. I'm very fortunate because when I was doing a writing workshop class, I was told by a number of authors and teachers that the author gets no say in the cover whatsoever. But I'm very happy to say that I was very fortunate. I actually did go along with the publisher. He presented the cover in draft form, and I liked it immediately. I felt that it matched the content of the book, and I was very keen to secure the image for the book. So I could say that I had input.
Yeah, which is it is a rare thing, you know.
It appears to be,
yeah.
but not in my case. So I'm very fortunate. I felt that I had input, you know, from start to finish in the entire process.
So that's an illustration, I'm assuming. So did you have any communication with the illustrator at all for the?
This is an established piece.
Yeah.
The publisher thought that it suited the story, and rightly so. It does appear to do so, including the wallpaper in the background.
Awesome. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's even a few characters there if you look closely. And no, so it wasn't actually drawn for the book. It's actually an established piece.
So one of those happy kind of synergies that happen from time to time. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know it's only just new, but has there been much feedback on the novel for you at this stage?
We're right at the very beginning, but it got a very positive review in the Saturday paper. So we're very happy about that.
Yeah, and the Saturday paper is a fairly major publication. You know,
absolutely.
It's got a very good pedigree to it.
Yes.
So that would make you feel extremely kind of...
Well, it was nice because I spoke to the publisher about it, and we could both see that the reviewer seemed to be very comfortable with the content and seemed to get the story.
Yeah. So, you know, you've got experience teaching literature
Yes.
and working overseas.
Yes.
What has been some of the learnings you've had from some of the places that you've been to that I guess inform your writing? You know?
Well, I've worked in Europe, and it's partly set in Europe. I've worked here in Melbourne in Australia, so you gain so much because when you go and visit a place, and if you're a tourist, I think you see a place very differently. Whereas when you settle down and you work and live in a place, I think you get to know it a little bit better. So it's a huge advantage.
Yeah. Have you been back to Malta at all? You know,
I taught in Malta.
Yeah. You know, going back there after, I guess, coming to Australia at a younger age, was that your first time back in Malta?
It was, when I taught there for a year.
Yeah. And how did you find the experience of going back?
I loved it.
Yeah. What was the, if you were to sort of think about you as a young kid coming to Australia,
Yes.
then growing up here and I guess adjusting to being in a Maltese household in Australia,
Yes.
and then going back there as an adult,
Yes.
how did your mind register and appreciate the differences or the parts of you that you maybe didn't realise were so Maltese?
Well, my reaction to being in Malta, I still remember to this day, was very positive. I really enjoyed it, and it was probably exactly as I thought it would be. Both my parents are Maltese. I was born there. Maltese was the language of the family home when I was growing up, as well as English. There was very little that surprised me because we had so many relatives visit us over the years. So there was still quite a number of exchanges, even though I hadn't been there myself.
Yeah. The character in the novel is called Silvio Portelli.
Yes.
And, you know, very much a Maltese character.
A good Maltese name?
A good Maltese name, absolutely.
Okay.
The decision to actually, make him Maltese.
Yes.
You know, I guess what drew you to that decision?
I teach creative writing, and I tell my students, try and write what you know about, what's close to home, because you'll have more success with that. So that's the reason. I think it's much more easier to write about what you know about rather than something that's a little bit outside your field of experience.
U bekk wasalna fit-tmiem episodju ieħor ta' Maltese DownUnder. Jiena Marlin nirringrazzjakom tal-attenzjoni u nfakkarkom li tistgħu tagħmlu kuntatt magħna permezz tal-email maltesetv@gmail.com kif ukoll permezz tal-paġna tagħna fuq Facebook. Filwaqt li nagħtikom appuntamenti oħra bħallum ġimgħa fl-istess ħin nixtieqilkom is-saħħa. Maltese DownUnder thanks the Malta Tourism Authority, Mayfield's Business Advisors, MPD Steak Kitchen, Maltese Pastizzi Bar and Restaurant, First National Borg & Associates, Maltese Original Pastizzi Company, Smartline and our bronze sponsors.